Moral virtue, on rediscovering a code of proper conduct for today's world. Let me tell you about two separate circumstances that recently happened. I was riding my bike down the street, and out of the blue, a cyclist cuts me off and insults me. 3 months ago, I had a difficult decision. I had two jobs that came in that were offered to me. I had to make a quick decision. What should I do? Now, how do these two separate circumstances relate to one another? Well, they both required that I find the best or most appropriate response to a difficult decision. They were tests of moral virtue. Now, for the cyclist, on the one extreme, I could have chased him down and attacked him for his insult. On the other extreme, I could have had no emotion whatsoever. I could have, hey, thanks very much for the insult. Now, about the job decision, I could have deliberated and deliberated and deliberated and never made any decision whatsoever on which job to take. On the other hand, I could merely have flipped a coin one day and made a rash, quick decision based on luck without any thought about long-term consequences or cost and benefit of the various jobs. So how do I know what the best course of action is to take? Which extreme should I have taken? Now, many societies throughout history have sought to answer this exact question, and they have typically framed this in terms of codes of conduct. Many ancient societies had individual codes of conduct. Modern organizations have their own codes of conduct. Religions are founded on codes of conduct, and many politicians have their own brand of conduct these days. Ancient Greek philosophy sought to answer the same questions. One such philosopher, Aristotle, wrote many books on virtue and ethics, and in it he sought to understand what moral virtue was. Morality is a particular system of values and principles of conduct, especially one held by a person or society. Virtue, the Greek word for that is arete. Arete means the best. That doesn't mean the best of everyone, but your personal best. Being best at something is an excellence. Therefore, moral virtue is how to conduct yourself excellently. So, how does one conduct oneself excellently? What is an excellence? Well, Aristotle defines an excellence as the habit of choosing the mean between the extremes of excess or deficiency with regard to an action or an emotion. Now, he uses the word habit, which means this is a choice. This is something that we can choose to do. We have control over whether we choose an excess or an extreme or deficiency with regard to an action. If we make this a habit, it becomes our second nature. So looking at a list of actions or feelings, the mean between the excesses or deficiencies is what Aristotle called the golden mean. This is what we should strive to achieve to be virtuous. Looking at the cyclist's actions, the cyclist acted toward me with anger. The cyclist was irascible. That's an excess of patience. He was not patient enough. Looking at the cyclist's other action, which was his social conduct, was the cyclist friendly? I would argue the cyclist had a deficiency of friendliness. The cyclist was cantankerous. Therefore, the cyclist acted with both an excess and a deficiency of various emotions. The cyclist was not acting with virtue toward me. The cyclist was bad-tempered, argumentative, uncooperative. With regard to my decision on which job to take, I can apply these same frameworks. Now, taking a quick detour to Plato. Plato was Aristotle's student, and Plato thought that the highest virtue was wisdom or prudence, which became one of the four cardinal virtues of Christian philosophy. To be prudent is acting with or showing care and thought for the future. Therefore, with regard to my decision on which job to take, I should deliberate but I should not deliberate too long. I should care and have thought for the future, but not so much that I can't make a decision. I should choose the mean between the extremes of action. So therefore, if you choose the mean between the extremes of action, you will conduct yourself excellently and with virtue. I hope you found this presentation enlightening in some way. Virtue is something that humans have long struggled with individually, at the level of the family, or at the level of society. Aristotle's framework became the inspiration for the cardinal virtues and the cardinal sins in medieval Christian philosophy. Yet, as adherence to religious precepts fades in the West, I contend that the individual, the family, and the state in the West may well find itself unmoored or detached from the central precepts of ethical conduct and virtuousness. We may know what these words mean, but we don't have the practice in applying them in the real world every day. We don't have the practice of making a habit out of choosing the mean between the extremes of action. Aristotle's ethics might be that springboard toward rediscovering a code of proper conduct for today's world.